there are two agencies. One, lovely name, the UN High Commission for Refugees. That sounds pretty good, right? High Commission for Refugees. It is responsible for the well-being of nearly all of the world's more than 30 million refugees. Their mandate is if these refugees cannot go home, they are to find settlement places for them in third world countries. That's the mandate. It's a limited mandate. They don't have the right to exist forever. UNRWA was the only agency in the UN system clearly designated to have as its purpose keeping the Palestinian refugee situation alive and having nothing to do with resettlement. Not only that, in the UNRWA schools in Gaza, hatred for Israel is a daily agenda item for the kids. So UNRWA can only continue if they have millions of refugees totally dependent on them, refugees who will not be moved to a non-refugee country where they could settle and be absorbed, but who are going to stay right where they are, have children, and let the problem fester. UNRWA promotes the festering while it's bringing in, to whatever extent the people get it, food, medical care, education. It's a real mixed bag. You know that approximately 800,000 Jews were expelled from Arab countries in 1948, right? You know that. And mostly they came to Israel, and mostly they settled. And despite the fact that it took 2 or 3 generations, their Middle Easternness is now a full part of Israeli society. They're Sephardim, they're Middle Eastern, they're MENA, Middle East, North African. They are of darker skin. They are fully a part of Israeli society. How much money was spent by the United Nations in resettling these people? The answer is none. Okay? The answer is none. What do we do? What should the appropriate Jewish response be? UNRWA feeds 1 million, who knows, a day. Medical education, despite the nature of the education, they are handling that, and they are working assiduously to keep Palestinian refugees as refugees. The only place I'm aware of, and please, I know you'll correct me, the only place I'm aware of where Palestinians, refugees, have settled into the adopted country is Jordan. I could be wrong. That's my understanding. And that Palestinians now comprise a significant minority in the population, have a very high representation in the parliament, and are power figures in Jordan. That's not the case in Lebanon. It's not the case in Egypt. And it's certainly not the case with Gaza. I'm going to stop talking. I'd like to have short answers, your responses from a bunch of folks. I see Steve and then Sylvia.
I'll be quick on 2 points. One, Jordan, you are only partially right because they did not want all of the refugees, and it's the Jordanian government in large part responsible for there being refugee camps on the West Bank. As for what to do about food, we need to find a way for Israel and other humanitarian organizations to airlift food and supplies into Gaza without the UN, without UNRWA's involvement, and probably without the Red Cross involvement because they don't seem to care too much, and find a way to distribute the food directly without going through Hamas, through some airlift system with some group on the ground that can administer it in a fair way.
Thank you very much, Sylvia.
I think this whole thing about refugee camps and refugees is a PR stunt because these people have been, you should pardon me, refugees for 50, 70, whatever years. And it's a way of saying, look at what they are doing to us instead of building societies and building economies and doing all the sorts of things that the Jews who came from elsewhere did in order to be at home. I don't know the answer to the food, although I think Steve's idea of airlifting worked well in Berlin, so maybe it would work in Gaza.
That's fine. I'm just saying I'm glad Steve didn't suggest bringing in tractors, but then go ahead, please.
But the idea is that if we keep accepting their self-description as refugees, they are always going to be saying, poor me, it's your fault.
Thank you, Sylvia. Do we have some more? This is a question that is really hot, and it is being debated. Rebecca.
It makes sense to me that UNRWA would be corrupt because how do you hire someone for UNRWA? It's who you know, right? That's how anybody gets a job. So they're hiring from within the Gazan population. And my question is, where is the Salvation Army? The Salvation Army usually goes into these places, and I haven't heard anything about the Salvation Army in this particular war.
Okay, I was raised.
Salvation Army certainly in Ukraine.
I was raised with a terrible Salvation Army song. Salvation Army, Salvation Army, put a nickel in the drum, feed another drunken bum. Salvation. That was an older view. Salvation Army is a great institution. And frankly, I've heard no mention. Zero. I mean, you're the first person to say Salvation Army in a conversation about the Middle East. I don't know. It could be. Remember, Salvation Army is religious. Okay? I'm guessing. I don't know. But Salvation Army has a religious mission. And that may be why they're not there. I don't know. I don't know. Good question. Okay. Please, anyone else want to jump in with your feelings about how we should go with this or how you feel about it? Do you care? Does it matter? Is it part of an ongoing problem? Anybody else? Okay, then we're going to go on. I guess I have a personal perspective, and that the very notion that there is a specific UN agency dedicated to protecting the ongoing status of Arab refugees, Palestinian refugees, is a problem that is unacceptable to me. And that its work should be absorbed into the High Commission of Refugees, where the same rules would apply, 10 years as a refugee, whatever it is, and out you go. It's not a permanent sinecure. Out you go. Many of us, how many of you, many of us have visited Merkazei Klita, absorption centers inside Israel for people who were coming in. And they brought the Russians, the Ethiopians, the wherever, into these absorption centers, taught them Hebrew, helped them find a trade, and got them established into Israeli society, and out they go. They were not ideal. This was not dreamland. There were problems. We acknowledge that. But they were set up so that refugee is not the same as permanent.
I can't tell what to click.
Okay.
What
Susan?
do I click? Yeah, what do I click? I don't know how to navigate. This is my first time doing this.
Okay. First time player. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. How do I navigate this where I can ask a question?
Okay. It says.
Do you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can, and I can see you too.
Okay. So it says.
Yeah.
I think reactions. Is that it?
I don't know.
Yes.
As long as you can hear me.
And yes, it's reactions.
Wait, Susan. Okay. It's one of the things at the bottom says reactions. When you hit that, one of the options is raise hand.
I don't see where it says reactions. Oh, okay. It says recording live stream. I don't see reactions.
Move your cursor and a bar of icons should pop up.
Move my what?
Cursor.
Yeah.
And a bar of icons should show up.
Move my cursor. Oh, there I go. Thank you. Okay, I see the bottom. What am I supposed to hit now?
Reactions.
Reactions. Stop video, mute, share screen. Oh, there we go. I see it. Got it. I clicked.
And now it should say raise hand.
Okay. Okay.
Inshallah. God is great. Okay. Very good. So, did you want to say something, Susan?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions because I want to make sure I remember this. You said 8,000 Jews were expelled from Arab countries a second ago. What years? What did that take place?
No, 800.
800,000.
800,000. Yeah.
Okay, and that was 47 through 50.
Oh,
it wasn't one day. It was when Israel was established.
I got it.
Okay. Jewish populations were expelled, penniless, kicked out.
Got it. Now, the other question I asked, because I arrived just a few minutes late and you were talking, and I'm interested in everything you're saying, but I want to know, what is the question, the topic for today's discussion?
The topic is, what do we do with UNRWA, a United Nations agency that exists solely to support and perpetuate Palestinian refugee status? Every other refugee problem in the world is handled by the United Nations under its High Commission for Refugees. Right. Only the Palestinians have their own. And they work, it's self-perpetuating. Okay, Joanne.
Okay.
Yeah, well, hi. I just wanted to comment that this situation has been going on since Israel was established. It's nothing new at all. So, I don't know, why are we talking about it now?
Because of the participation of the UNRWA people in the October 7th slaughter. That's why.
Yeah.
Okay. Many people, I would say they crossed a big line.
Yeah.
It's one thing to be corrupt. It's something else to be murderers and kidnappers, which they are now. I see Zach's.
Yeah, I guess I have a problem with putting all of the blame for this on them. they have some bad players, but so did we on January the 6th. We now know from the Pentagon that we have a large number of military people in the US who are in the far right. So every group has a group of bad seeds in it that you have to get to. So to blame them for this, then we have to blame ourselves for our own government. I mean, I think in every group, there's a group of heathens, you know, but to make it where they should be punished because some of their members were part of Hamas, and to punish the group of 2 million people who are there. And I also guess I feel like they wouldn't have to defend refugees if we had a statehood for both groups. We wouldn't be calling them refugees. And a lot of them have, they have leases from the Ottoman Empire. I mean, they are home, and to expect them to leave, I just think I don't know. I don't understand why they should be leaving their home, but they should be given a home.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Rebecca, I'm trying to catch hands. I'm sorry.
I thought UNRWA was just established for Palestinian refugees, period. That's all they do are Palestinian refugees.
That's correct. Joanne.
Sorry, no other comment. I forgot to take my hand down.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. I see Steve and one other. I want to see who the one other is. Oh, Joanne is still up. Okay.
I
Steve.
just want to say they're not being asked necessarily to leave their homes. They were offered being, for example, in the West Bank as part of Jordan. Now we could make a separate state, but not be technically in a refugee camp. We're not saying resettlement needs to be in a place other than where they are. They need to be out of refugee camps and in some type of sovereign state that will recognize the state of Israel and live with it. It's not, you don't have to solve the problem by moving them to some sub-Saharan African country. But they need to be out of refugee camps and not treated as refugees.
What do I do if I want to share a thought? Can anyone hear me?
Yes, but you have to raise your hand and not.
Where do I do that? Where do I click?
The reaction.
Oh, reaction. And then, okay, two things.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm learning. I'm learning.
Please don't come in without that.
I'm sorry.
Susan Pitts. Okay, we got that. Now, we're going to leave the topic.
Oh.
But it's really difficult. And the world has done a good job of perpetuating an ever-growing community committed to Israel's destruction. That's what UNRWA is doing, from my perspective, along with all of the other very important humanitarian things, which, as Steve pointed out, and really the mechanism exists. The United Nations can take it all within the High Commission for Refugees and treat the Palestinian refugees like refugees anywhere else, instead of making them a unique cause. We're going to go on. February 11th, a very important date in the world. Super Bowl Sunday. And please remember, I will not be responding to email, phone calls, knocks on the door, stones thrown at my window. No, it's Super Bowl Sunday on February 11th. The owner of the Patriots, New England Patriots, has purchased a 30-second ad attacking anti-Semitism.
What?
For the Super Bowl. We're talking millions of dollars for such a purchase. So I'm going to watch, and when the ad comes up, I'm going to, applaud. Next. What's going on in Congress regarding aid for Israel, aid for Ukraine, aid for Taiwan is a massive embarrassment. And if you think of anything that makes us look weak, dysfunctional, and impotent, it is that Congress can't get together to support 3 huge grants, which both parties want. The Republicans have trouble with aid for Ukraine. They do. Some Democrats want aid to Israel conditioned by what the progressive left in the Democratic Party feels must be done, which is total ceasefire and, in many ways, a dramatic weakening of Israel. Having said that, there is still a significant population of Republicans, senators, representatives, Democrat senators, representatives who want to support this deal. Then it was connected to solving the border problem, Texas, basically Mexico. I have an attitude. My attitude is that the previous administration, which is the current administration, Biden, and the Trump administration, and the Obama administration failed miserably in dealing with the refugee problem. The South Americans, refugee is such a hard word. Many of them are economic refugees. What they really want is to come to the United States, get a job, work, and support their families, which, by the way, is not an evil thing. But they're not the same as refugees kicked out of the country because people are gunning for them. That's another kind of refugee. In order to solve the grant needs now for Ukraine, by the way, emergency needs, the Republicans have said you got to solve the border situation. I am deeply sympathetic to that concern. And I think it's a disgrace that the United States they still haven't settled the problem of the dreamers who were born in America and somehow don't have a status.
Right.
Okay?
They were not born in America.
They came as children, infants.
Right.
Okay. They haven't solved it. It's not 1 year, not 3 years, it's 10 years, it's more. Now, look what's going on. The House Republicans tried to pass a bill that would at least fund Israel. It didn't survive. The Senate passed a bipartisan bill to, God knows, not resolve the problem of how to handle those crossing the border from the south, but makes a bigger move toward dealing with it than has been made in decades. That has now been shot down by the Republicans in the House.
That's right.
Who don't want it funded because they want to keep it as a campaign issue until November. Bottom line, I'm going to stop ranting. It is horrible that our Congress can't get what it wants. Aid to Ukraine, aid to Taiwan, aid to Israel, dealing with some of the serious, crippling immigration problems from the South.
That's right.
And we are living with this. And for many of us, as we go to the election booths, the voting booths, we're going to forget all about that as we vote for senators and representatives, president, and we're just going to forget that we are living at a time when our government is amazingly dysfunctional right now. And if I sound upset, it's because I haven't had lunch. Okay. Let me just try to grab Susan, brief comment.
Oh, do you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm still learning this, so at least you can hear me. I agree with, I happen to be in agreement with everything you said. And I wanted to also add that it's a small group. The progressives are a small group in the House of Representatives, and the vast majority of Democrats want the bill passed where Israel would get help and Ukraine would get help, and the refugees that we're dealing, we would revamp that and get help. It's not the Democrats, even though the progressives, you're right, there's a group in the Democrat Party against that because of Israel, but they're a small group. It still will pass, but it's not passing with the Republicans in the Congress. They don't want to support Ukraine or other things, and I happen to feel I'm with Biden on this bill. I happen to think that we need to help Ukraine. We definitely need to help Israel and revamp the refugee thing. So I'm for this, and
Okay. All right.
Okay. Susan, may I encourage you to put your hand down?
Oh, thank you.
Go back to reactions and hit lower hand. And
okay,
then
go back to reactions and hit
lower
I see
hand.
It. Okay, thank you. I did that.
And please mute yourself when you're not speaking.
Mute.
Thank you.
Where do I mute it?
Okay, Rebecca.
I take a current event class through Emeritus, and one of the guest speakers recently, whose name I can't remember, said the border crisis will never be resolved because it's a talking point, it's an election point for both parties.
Thanks. That's such good news. Okay. Any other hands up? What do we see? I don't see any other hands up. I'd like to welcome Harvey. It's good to see Harvey and Howard.
Howdy.
Howdy. Okay, so that's that. We have now resolved UNRWA, and we now have resolved funding and dysfunctionality within Congress, right? So we are doing a good job. Next. I'm not surprised at this. The IDF believes now that a quarter of the hostages, 136, still being held by Hamas are dead. And that means, we're talking loose numbers. They're human beings, but they're loose numbers. 32 of the 136 are probably dead. One of the reasons why the prisoner and hostage exchange didn't move forward is because how do I say this? Hamas has fewer living hostages than they said. There's something else going on. I don't have much hair, so I'm going to be very careful. I will not tear my hair out. They are blankety blank negotiating over the return of the bodies. I find that inhumane and moderately infuriating. What do you mean we have to give you this so you'll give us back dead bodies? But who am I to have a feeling? Herman. I don't hear you, Herman. I'm sorry. Herman?
Sorry, Rabbi.
Oh, there you be. Okay.
I just got a news flash on my telephone. It says Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has dismissed Hamas's proposals for a ceasefire and hostage deal in Gaza, calling them delusional in a setback to diplomatic efforts to pause the war. It goes on from there, but that's the gist of it.
I am not far from a bathroom. When we finish, I'm going to stick my head in a toilet and flush. Okay? Wow. I'm not surprised, by the way, Herman.
I didn't think you would be, neither am I.
Yeah, but there were things in that were totally unacceptable. And besides, in the real world of negotiations, prime ministers and presidents and leaders and political party people can make public pronouncements, but that's not where the negotiations take place. They don't take place in PR. They take place in small rooms. And I think that our Secretary of State Blinken has been doing a very good job. I mean, not yet results. Okay, so the IDF believes that 32 of the 136 are dead. And we know that this is an IDF position because they've started notifying the families. They know the names and they're notifying the families. And when David Grossman wrote a number of fabulous books, Israeli author, one of the very best. David Grossman, including one that's A Horse Walked Into a Bar, which is an absolutely wonderful book. Now, Grossman lost his son in a prior war. And he describes what it was like to hear a knock on the door, open it, and see the 3 government military representatives standing there. There's only one thing that means. And he describes it in his book. So these people are now getting knocks on the door. I'm going to move on from there. There's a lot to do. Any comments? I don't want to miss. Your words are really important. Something, Harv.
Yeah. If we're supposed to pursue justice, how do you pursue justice if you're Israel in this case? That's my question. Given everything that's happened.
Anyone else with a question? No? No, Harv, I'm not gonna run away. Justice is not an absolute. Stanley talking, not a philosopher. Justice is not an absolute. Justice, according to the books, is not always justice in terms of existential reality. Things flash through my mind. Does the name Wernher von Braun strike a bell for some of you? Harv,
Scientist.
He was a rocket scientist from
Rocket
Germany,
scientist.
and he worked on Hitler's rocket program.
And
work on ours.
And he worked on ours. We got him here, and we overlooked what he did, and to use him here.
So we rescued Wernher von Braun from post-war courts, brought him to where? Alabama, I think, Alabama. And he built, not by his own hands, he built the U.S. space program. Where's the justice? Okay? He's responsible for thousands and thousands of deaths. If I were, thank God I'm not, sitting in the White House and someone handed me a briefing and said, Rabbi President, we want to bring Wernher von Braun here, save him from trial, and let him work on our space program, which is falling behind the Russians and Sputnik. Strict justice, Harv? Give him in court. He should pay. I'm sorry for such a sloppy answer. It's how can Israel find justice? I can only hope that Israel maintains a sense that protecting human lives is a core Jewish value, along with protecting the existence of the state of Israel. And Israel is left alone to juggle that, Harv. It's left alone to juggle that. Okay, Merle.
Yeah, I back to the hostages that we've been told are dead. Will any of these bodies be returned to the families so that they can bury them, honor them properly?
When they are returned to Israeli hands. They are sitting in a tunnel someplace. And they will be buried when they're returned.
If they're returned. Hopefully they'll be returned.
If they are returned.
Okay, I was curious.
Today was fun. I mean, it just absolutely, we've solved nothing. Piece of good news. Category leadership. Are there still leaders in the world worthy of following? Does the name Benny Gantz, Gantz, mean something to you? Does someone want to raise a hand and just give like what they think it is? A Benny Gantz? It's not a cartoon show. Reese?
God willing, he's the next prime minister after we get rid of Netanyahu.
That was a political statement. We will let that slide by. Benny Gantz is part of the war cabinet, 3-4 people who are really running things now. He is head of the National Unity Party. And he may very well be Israel's next prime minister with Reese's support. Now, why mention him? He is a well-respected military and political leader in Israel. A year ago, I warned us about Ben Gvir and Smotrich. And I do want you all to remember that I mentioned them first, okay? And you'll remember I said, watch out, these people are satanic. And I was right. Now, Benny Gantz is a good guy and a substantial leader. Why mention him now? He just announced that he is moving his family to Yad Mordechai, one of the border kibbutzim on the Gaza border.
Why?
He's making a statement for the state of Israel that we are not abandoning that border from which thousands have fled. And he is moving back and establishing his home there. As a symbolic gesture, this has resonated hugely in the state of Israel and made me smile that we are not totally in a world devoid of leaders who can make significant gestures. Rebecca.
I just need clarification. What's the difference between the border and the Gaza envelope?
Nothing. Okay, the envelope, which is wonderful. How did I learn what an envelope was in Israel? Ma'atafa. Ma'atafa is an envelope. How did I know that? Because people were talking about Ma'atafa to Gaza. They were talking about the Gaza envelope. And I said, what's a Ma'atafa envelope? Thus, I learned the word. The Gaza envelope is the Israeli side of the Gaza border. The kibbutzim that were destroyed October 7th were the Gaza envelope. They were built along the Gaza border mainly by left-wing peaceniks who wanted to establish an Israeli presence on the border and be open to cross-border. They hired Palestinians. They did all kinds of stuff. They had a real hand in trying to build a secure border. They were the Ma'atafat Gaza. They were the Gaza envelope or the Gaza border. What's happened is Israel, this moment, doesn't have a border envelope. The villages, the kibbutzim, are destroyed. What Gantz is trying to do is to try to lead a movement of people back. And it's not easy. With this, we're going to have to stop. Because the military is saying they want a demilitarized zone on the Israeli side and on the Gazan side across which nobody could move, which means Israel would lose the farm, the land that were part of the Gaza envelope. Did I make that? Did that make sense to you? And there is a really negative reaction to that. The military says the only way we can secure Israel is a demilitarized zone, which means no farmers, no planting, orchards, nothing. Demilitarized zone on both sides. And Gantz was saying, I'm moving back. That's what happened there. Susan, a quick comment, and we're going to close.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to know that I really liked your example of how complicated justice can be by describing the man that we brought here to start our space program. And I'm interested in reading more about that. What was his name?
Yeah. In some places, he's a hero.
I understand.
Werner,
the
which
complications.
Is Werner.
Okay.
Next, von, the German von, and the last is Braun.
Braun. Okay, because I find that a worthy example of the complications of justice and survival.
Folks, thank you so much for today. Wow, we had an agenda. And to those who just joined us for the first time, you're welcome. God love you. Join us in 2 weeks.
Okay, bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Don't forget the Super Bowl. Go Kansas City.
No.
No way.
Kansas City win is good for Biden.
Goodbye.